My son patted my shoulder and told me I was too old to need my own retirement money, right after he spent $350,000 of it on a sports car and a vacation. I stood there in silence, walked to my room, and dialed 3 numbers I hadn't called in years. He thought I was helpless. By the end of the week, he learned exactly who raised him. To understand how I got here, you have to understand who I've been to this family for the last 30 years. My name is Ruth Mae Coleman. I was born in a small house outside Charlotte, North Carolina. My mother cleaned houses. My father worked the railroad until his back gave out. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and we had church on Sundays. I promised myself young that I would build something more, so I studied hard. I got my nursing license at 23. I joined the union not long after that, back when the union still meant something to me, back when it meant something to a lot of us. I worked labor and delivery for 38 years, night shift mostly, because night shift paid a little more, and every extra dollar mattered. I delivered thousands of babies into this world. I held hands with mothers who were scared out of their minds. I held hands with fathers who fainted at the sight of blood. I loved that work. I loved it even on the nights my feet were swollen and my back ached so bad I could barely stand. I married my husband, Charles, when I was 26. He worked construction. Good man, steady man. We had 3 children together, my daughter Patrice, my oldest son Marcus, and my youngest, Darnell. Charles passed 12 years ago. Heart attack, sudden, no warning. One day he was fixing the porch steps, and 2 days later, I was picking out a casket. After that, it was just me and my pension, and whatever savings the 2 of us had built over 30 years of doing without. I want you to understand something. I never had extra money to throw around. Every dollar in that retirement account came from a double shift. It came from working Christmas mornings so a younger nurse could be home with her kids. It came from skipping vacations, skipping new furniture, skipping things other people take for granted. That $350,000 wasn't luck. That was 38 years of my body and my time. Now let me tell you about my children, because they are not all the same. Patrice, my daughter, is a school teacher in Atlanta. She calls me every Sunday. She never once asked me for a dime, not even when her car broke down 2 years ago and she had to take the bus to work for a month. She'd rather struggle quietly than ask her mother for help. That's how I raised her. Marcus, my oldest, is a supervisor at a shipping company outside Raleigh. He's got 2 kids of his own now. Steady job, steady marriage, steady life. He calls me most weeks too. Sometimes he sends me flowers for no reason at all, just because he's thinking of me. Then there's Darnell. Darnell was my baby, born 8 years after Marcus. Kind of a surprise, kind of a gift. And maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe I held on to him a little too tight. Maybe I let him get away with things I never would have let the other 2 get away with. Even as a boy, Darnell had a way of making you feel guilty for saying no to him. If I told him he couldn't have new sneakers, he'd go quiet for days, like I had broken his heart. If I asked him to get a summer job like his brother did, he'd tell me I didn't understand how hard things were for him. I believed him. Lord help me. I believed him every single time. He grew into a grown man who still expected things to be handed to him. He bounced between jobs, sold cars for a while, did some kind of online marketing thing that never seemed to make any actual money. Every year or 2, there was a new plan, a new hustle, and every time, it needed just a little help from Mama to get off the ground. I gave him that help more times than I care to admit. 2,000 here, 5,000 there. I told myself it was an investment in his future. Patrice used to warn me. She'd say, "Mama, you're not helping him, you're enabling him." I didn't want to hear it. A mother wants to believe her child will change. 3 years ago, my knees started giving me trouble, getting to the bank, keeping track of bills, reading the fine print on my Medicare paperwork. It all got harder. Marcus lives 2 hours away. Patrice lives even further, in Atlanta. Darnell was the only one close by, 20 minutes down the road. So when my doctor suggested I set up power of attorney, someone who could step in and handle things if I ever couldn't, Darnell was the obvious choice. He was right there. He said all the right things. "Mama, you took care of me my whole life. Let me take care of you now." I cried when he said that. I actually cried, because it felt like maybe all those years of giving him second chances had finally paid off. Maybe he had grown up after all. We went to the lawyer's office together in March. I signed the papers giving him access to my accounts, so he could pay my bills if my hands ever got too shaky to write a check, so he could handle things if my mind ever started slipping the way my own mother's did toward the end. I trusted him with the one thing I had left. 38 years of double shifts, sitting in that account, waiting to carry me through whatever years I had left. For the first 2 weeks, everything seemed fine. He paid the electric bill on time. He called to check on me. I remember thinking, look at that. My baby boy really has grown up. Then things started feeling different. Small things at first. He stopped answering some of my calls right away. He seemed distracted when I did get him on the phone, like his mind was somewhere else entirely. I chalked it up to him being busy. I had no reason yet to think otherwise. I didn't know it then, but while I was chalking things up to nothing, my son was already logging into my account behind my back, moving my money in pieces so it wouldn't catch my eye all at once. I didn't know that the boy I raised, the boy I gave every second chance to, was already spending his mother's pension like it was his own personal fortune. I found out the truth on a Tuesday afternoon, in a way I never saw coming, and that's when everything changed. That Tuesday afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with my bank statement open in front of me. My hands started shaking before my mind even understood what my eyes were reading. $350,000. Gone. Not stolen by a stranger, not lost to some scam caller. Moved out, piece by piece, by my own son. I want you to imagine that feeling for a second. Imagine looking at the number that was supposed to carry you through your last years on this earth, and watching it disappear into someone else's hands. Someone you raised, someone you trusted with your whole heart. What would you have done in that moment, if it was your own child who did this to you? Tell me in the comments below. I want to know. I sat there a long time before I picked up the phone and called Darnell. I sat with that bank statement for almost an hour before I found the courage to call him. My hands were still shaking. Not from fear, from something closer to disbelief. The kind of disbelief that makes your whole body go cold, even in a warm kitchen. Before I dialed, I looked at a photo on my refrigerator. Darnell, at his high school graduation, grinning ear to ear, my arm around his shoulder. I remembered how proud I was that day. I remembered thinking, this boy is going to do something with his life. I held on to that picture in my mind for a moment, like it might soften whatever was coming. Then I picked up the phone. He picked up on the 4th ring. I could hear music in the background, and voices laughing, like he was somewhere having a good time. "Hey Ma, what's up?" I asked him straight out. I said, "Darnell, where is my money?" The music got quieter, like he'd stepped outside. He didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than any words could have. A man who did nothing wrong answers a question like that fast. A man who did something wrong needs a second to find his story. "Ma, calm down. I can explain." I told him I didn't want an explanation. I told him I wanted my $350,000 back in my account by the end of the week. He laughed. Actually laughed, like I had told a joke at a family dinner. "Ma, it's not that deep. I was gonna tell you eventually." I asked him what he spent it on, and that's when he told me. A sports car, $65,000, cash, sitting in his driveway right now. He even sent me a photo while we were still on the phone, like he was proud of it. Red convertible, dealership sticker still in the window. Then he told me about the trip. A week in the Bahamas for him and 6 of his friends. First-class flights, an oceanfront villa, bottle service every single night. The rest of the money, he said, he was figuring out, which I have since learned meant it was already gone too. spent on things he couldn't even remember by the time I asked him. I asked him how he could do this to me. 38 years I worked double shifts, so my children would never go without. I skipped my own comfort so there would be something left when I got old and couldn't work anymore. I remember telling him about the year I worked every single holiday shift, so a younger nurse on my floor could be home with her babies, and how I did that same thing for 6 years straight, because the extra pay meant one day I wouldn't be a burden to anybody. And he spent that money in 6 weeks on a car and a beach vacation. That's when he said the words, "I will never forget as long as I live." Ma, come on, you're 71. What are you even going to do with all that money? You don't need it like I need it right now. I asked him to repeat that. I needed to hear it a second time, because surely I had misheard my own son. He said it again, slower this time, like he thought I was hard of hearing, instead of hard of believing. You're too old to need that kind of money anyway. I'm young. I got my whole life ahead of me. You should be happy I'm out here living instead of sitting in that house doing nothing. Sitting in that house doing nothing. That's what he called my life. 38 years on my feet in a delivery room. 12 years alone since his father died, managing a house, a car, a whole life by myself on a fixed income, planning every dollar so I'd never be a burden on anybody. He called that doing nothing. I told him I needed that money for my medications. My blood pressure pills alone cost more than they should, even with insurance. I told him I needed it in case my knees got bad enough for surgery, because the doctor already told me it was only a matter of time. I told him that money was supposed to be there if I ever needed a nursing home one day, so I wouldn't have to depend on any of my children to take care of me the way I took care of my own mother in her final years. He sighed into the phone, the exact same sigh he used to give me as a teenager when I asked him to take out the trash. Ma, you're being dramatic. Medicare covers all that stuff anyway. You'll be fine. I'll pay you back eventually. I promise. I asked him when eventually was supposed to be. I don't know, Ma. When I get on my feet. I got some deals in the works. Just trust me, okay? You always taught us to chase our dreams. This is me chasing mine. I sat there holding the phone, and I felt something inside me go very still and very quiet. Not sad anymore. Something past sad. If you've ever loved someone so much that you kept giving them chances long after you should have stopped, you understand what I felt in that moment. It's a very specific kind of pain. It's the pain of finally seeing someone clearly, after years of choosing not to look too closely. I asked him one more question. I asked him if he understood that what he did was against the law, that power of attorney means you handle someone's affairs for their benefit, not your own, that what he did had a name, and the name was theft. He laughed again, that same easy laugh, like none of this could possibly touch him. Ma, you're not going to call the cops on your own son. Come on. Family don't do family like that. Besides, it's not like you can prove I did anything wrong. I had the paperwork. I had access. Ain't nothing illegal about a son helping his mama with her money. That was the moment. Not the money. Not even the car or the vacation. It was hearing my own son tell me, with a smile in his voice, that he believed he was untouchable. That he believed my love for him meant he could take whatever he wanted, and I would simply absorb it, the way I had absorbed every disappointment he'd ever handed me since he was a boy. I told him I loved him. That much was still true, and I don't believe love disappears just because someone hurts you. But I also told him this was not over, and I hung up the phone before he could say another word. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after that call ended. I looked at that graduation photo on my refrigerator one more time. I thought about my husband, Charles, and what he would have said if he was still alive, to hear his youngest son call his mother's whole life doing nothing. I thought about every night shift, every skipped vacation, every dollar I didn't spend on myself, so there'd be something left for my children one day. Darnell thought this was the end of it. He thought a laugh and an empty promise would be enough to make his mother go quiet and accept what he'd done. He had no idea who he was really dealing with. He had forgotten one very important thing about his mother. Before I was anybody's mama, I was Nurse Ruth Coleman, union proud, 38 years strong. And union people, we don't forget who stood beside us. We don't forget, and we don't forgive being made a fool of. I didn't cry that night. I want you to understand that clearly. There was a time in my life when I would have cried for days over something like this. But 38 years of nursing teaches you something important. When there's a crisis in front of you, you don't fall apart. You act. You assess the damage, and then you move. So that's what I did. The first thing I did was call my daughter, Patrice. It was almost 10 at night, but she picked up on the second ring, because that's the kind of daughter she is. I told her everything. The power of attorney, the $350,000, the sports car, the vacation, the words Darnell said to me about being too old to need my own money. Patrice went quiet for a moment, and then she said something I'll never forget. She said, "Mama, I'm done being gentle about this. It's time to fight." That single sentence gave me strength I didn't know I still had. The next morning, I was up before sunrise, same as I'd been every workday for 38 years. Old habits don't leave you, even after you retire. I made coffee, sat down at my kitchen table, and I got to work. First, I called my bank. I asked for 6 months of statements, every transaction, every transfer, everything in writing. The woman on the phone could hear something in my voice, because she didn't ask unnecessary questions. She just said, "I'll have that to you within the hour, ma'am." And she did. While I waited, I called an elder law attorney. Patrice had found her name online the night before and texted it to me before she even went to bed. The attorney's name was Ms. Whitfield, and she'd built her whole career helping seniors who'd been taken advantage of by people they trusted. When I explained my situation, she didn't sound shocked. She told me this happens more often than people realize. Family members with power of attorney, draining accounts, believing nobody will hold them accountable, because family don't do family like that. Ms. Whitfield told me 2 things that morning that changed everything. First, she told me power of attorney can be revoked immediately, in writing, and she could have the paperwork ready by that afternoon. Second, she told me that what Darnell did wasn't just a family betrayal, it was a crime. Financial exploitation of an elder, she called it. There was a name for what he did to me, and the law took it seriously, even if my own son didn't. By 11 that morning, I had the bank statements in my email. I sat at my kitchen table and went through every single transaction with a pen and a notepad, the same way I used to chart patient records back when I was working. 6 weeks of transfers, small ones at first, testing the waters, seeing if I'd notice. Then bigger ones, the $65,000 transfer to the car dealership, multiple charges to a travel agency, charges from a jewelry store I didn't recognize, charges from restaurants I'd never heard of, some of them at 2 and 3 in the morning. I highlighted every single line. By the time I was done, I had built a complete record of exactly how my son spent 38 years of my life in 6 short weeks. At 2 o'clock, I signed the paperwork revoking Darnell's power of attorney. Ms. Whitfield filed it immediately with my bank and with the state. Just like that, whatever access he thought he still had was gone. But paperwork alone wasn't going to be enough for me. I needed something more. I needed him to understand, in a way he couldn't laugh off, that what he did had consequences. That's when I thought about my old union brothers. For 38 years, I stood on picket lines with those men and women. I organized food drives for striking co-workers. I sat on the grievance committee for over a decade, fighting for nurses who'd been wronged by hospital administrators who thought they could push us around because we were just nurses. I earned respect in that union the hard way, one fight at a time. And respect like that doesn't disappear just because you retire. 3 men in particular came to mind. Big Ronaldo, who used to run union security during our strikes. A man built like a linebacker with a voice that could silence a room. Otis, who spent 20 years as a union rep and knew more about financial fraud and legal pressure than most lawyers I'd met. And Willis, quiet, careful, methodical, the kind of man who always seemed to know somebody who knew somebody. I called Ronaldo first. I told him everything. He didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a long pause on the line, and then he said, "Nurse Ruth, you took care of every single one of us for 38 years. Now it's our turn to take care of you." By that evening, all 3 men had come to my house. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table where I'd found out my whole retirement was gone, and we went through every page of evidence I'd gathered. Otis reviewed the financial records like he was reading a medical chart, circling discrepancies, cross-referencing dates. Willis made a few phone calls I wasn't part of, quiet conversations in my living room, doors closed. Ronaldo mostly listened, but every so often he'd shake his head and mutter something about entitled little boys who never had to work a day in their lives. I want you to understand something. This wasn't about revenge for the sake of revenge. This was about a boy who needed to learn a lesson his mother had failed to teach him for 31 years. A lesson about consequences, a lesson about respect, a lesson about the difference between love and being used. By the time those 3 men left my house that night, we had a plan. Not something reckless, not something illegal, something precise, something patient, something that would make sure Darnell understood exactly what he had done, in front of exactly the people he cared about, impressing the most. I went to bed that night for the first time since the phone call with something other than grief in my chest. It was resolve. Quiet, steady resolve. The same kind I used to feel walking into a delivery room during the hardest labor, knowing exactly what needed to be done, and knowing I was the one who was going to do it. Darnell was out there somewhere, probably still riding around in that sports car, probably still telling his friends how he'd put his old mother in her place. He had no idea that while he was out celebrating, 3 union men and 1 elder law attorney were quietly building the case that was about to end everything he thought he'd gotten away with. Here is something I've learned in 71 years on this earth. The people who do wrong rarely get caught by some grand, dramatic scheme. Most of the time, they get caught because arrogance makes people careless. Darnell's downfall didn't come from Ronaldo, Otis, or Willis breaking into anything or hacking anything. It came from my own son believing so completely that he'd won, he stopped being careful. It happened 4 days after that phone call. Darnell had been posting all over social media since the money disappeared. Photos of himself leaning against that red sports car. Videos from the Bahamas trip. Him and his friends on a yacht. Bottles of champagne. Everybody laughing. He wasn't hiding a single thing. He wasn't ashamed. If anything, he seemed proud, like a man showing off a trophy he'd earned, instead of one he'd stolen. Patrice was the one who noticed it first. She still followed him online, mostly to keep an eye on him for my sake, even after everything. Late one night, Darnell went live on social media from what looked like a friend's apartment. A small crowd of people were around him, drinks in hand, music playing low in the background. He was in a talkative mood, the kind of mood people get in when they've had a few drinks and they think everybody watching is on their side. He started talking about his mother. Patrice recorded the whole thing on her phone and sent it to me first thing the next morning. I watched it sitting at my kitchen table, the same table where all of this began. In the video, one of his friends off camera asked him, "Bro, for real, how'd you get the money for all this?" Darnell laughed, that same laugh he gave me on the phone. He said, "My mum's had this old retirement account just sitting there doing nothing. I mean, she's 71. What's she gonna do with 350 grand? Buy a bigger casket?" Everybody around him laughed. Somebody said something I couldn't quite make out. And then Darnell kept going, like he couldn't stop himself now that he'd started. She tried to come at me about it, talking about power of attorney, talking about it's illegal. I told her, ain't nobody gonna believe an old lady over her own son. Besides, I still got access to everything. She thinks she cancelled it, but I know the account number, I know the routing number. I got all her information memorized. She can't lock me out that easy. That was the mistake, not the spending, not the cruelty. The mistake was saying it all out loud, on a live broadcast, in front of dozens of people, with the recording still sitting on a server somewhere, permanent, time-stamped, impossible to take back. Because Darnell believed he was untouchable, he handed us something no amount of digging through bank statements could have given us: a confession. In his own voice, in his own words, admitting he knew what he did was wrong, admitting he intended to try again, admitting he believed nobody would ever take my word over his. Otis was the one who explained to me just how valuable that recording was. He said in all his years handling union grievances, the cases that always fell apart weren't the ones with weak evidence. They were the ones where the guilty party got smart, right before it mattered. Darnell hadn't gotten smart, he'd gotten comfortable, and comfortable people talk. Willis took that video straight to Ms. Whitfield, my attorney, the same day. She told me it changed everything. Financial records alone can sometimes be argued around. A grown man's own voice, admitting to a room full of witnesses that he manipulated an elderly woman and planned to continue accessing her accounts illegally. That's a different matter entirely. That's the kind of evidence that ends arguments before they even start. But Darnell wasn't finished making mistakes. 2 days after that live video, he made an even bigger one. He'd gone back to work at the car dealership where he sold cars part-time, the same job he'd been coasting through for 2 years. He still had access to the shared computer in the back office, the one all the salesmen used for paperwork. What he didn't realize was that he'd left himself logged into his personal email on that shared computer, and he'd forgotten to log out before his shift ended. The next salesman to use that computer was a young man named Curtis, who happened to be Willis's nephew. Small world, the union world. Curtis wasn't looking for anything, he was just trying to print a form. But when the screen came up, Darnell's email was sitting right there, open, unlocked, and one message caught Curtis's eye, because the subject line said, your mum's account. Curtis knew who Darnell's mother was. Everybody in that dealership knew Nurse Ruth's boy, because Darnell talked about it enough, bragging about the car, bragging about the vacation. Curtis didn't dig through private files. He didn't need to. The email right there on the screen was between Darnell and a friend, discussing plans to borrow a little more before she fully locks it down, in case my power of attorney revocation hadn't fully processed yet with every institution. Just a few lines. Just enough. Curtis took a photo with his phone before the screen timed out, and he called his uncle Willis that same afternoon. That's how it works, most of the time, in real life. Not some elaborate hack, not some criminal mastermind cracking a password. Just an arrogant young man who believed so deeply that he'd already won, he stopped covering his tracks. He left his email open on a shared computer. He bragged into a live camera. He told a room full of strangers that he thought his elderly mother was too weak and too foolish to fight back. By the end of that week, I had a recorded confession, financial records proving every transaction, and a written message showing clear intent to steal from me again. Ms. Whitfield told me we had more than enough to move forward, both with the civil case to recover my money and potentially with criminal charges if I chose to pursue them. I sat with that decision for a long time, because as angry as I was, he was still my son, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, the boy whose graduation picture still sat on my refrigerator. Part of me wanted to protect him from himself, even now. But then I thought about that live video again. The way he laughed, the way he called my life's work an old account just sitting there doing nothing, the way he told his friends I was too weak to fight back. No, protecting him from consequences was exactly what had created this mess in the first place. It was time for my son to finally learn what accountability actually looked like. 2 weeks after that live video, my grandson Marcus Jr. turned 10 years old. Marcus and his wife planned a big backyard party. The whole family was invited, along with neighbors and friends from the neighborhood. Darnell would be there. He was always there for the things that made him look good in front of people. Birthdays, holidays, anything with a crowd and a camera. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to avoid him completely, let the lawyers handle everything from a distance. But Ms. Whitfield and I had talked it through, and so had Ronaldo, Otis, and Willis. We agreed on something important. Darnell had humiliated me in private, over the phone, thinking nobody would ever know what he said. It felt right that accountability should happen the same way his crime did, out in the open, in front of the people whose opinion he actually cared about. So I went to that party. I wore my good blue dress, the one I usually save for church. I did my hair. I wanted to walk in looking like exactly who I am, a woman who built a life through hard work and dignity, not some broken old lady Darnell could dismiss with a laugh. The backyard was full when I arrived. Balloons, a bounce house for the kids, tables of food, maybe 40 people scattered around talking and laughing. Darnell was near the drink table, holding a plate, laughing loudly with two of his cousins. He still had that same easy confidence, like the world owed him applause just for showing up. He spotted me and waved, casual, like nothing at all had happened between us. "Hey, Ma, glad you made it." I didn't wave back the way he expected. I walked straight toward him, calm, steady, the same walk I used to have heading into a delivery room during a difficult labor. People started noticing something in the way I carried myself. Conversations around us quieted, one by one, the way a room does when it senses something is about to happen. Patrice moved closer to me on one side. Marcus stepped up on the other. And behind me, walking through the side gate right on schedule, came Ronaldo, Otis, and Willis, dressed sharp, no smiles on their faces. Darnell's own smile faltered when he saw them. "Ma, what's going on? Who are these?" "These are my union brothers," I said, loud enough for the whole backyard to hear. "Men who've known me for almost 40 years. Men who know exactly the kind of woman I am, and exactly the kind of life I built with my own 2 hands. The backyard had gone almost completely silent now. Even the children in the bounce house seemed to sense something, their laughter dying down to whispers. "Ma, can we talk about this somewhere private?" Darnell's voice had lost its earlier confidence. "No," I said. "We can't. You didn't have that conversation with me in private either, when you told a room full of your friends that your mother was too old and too foolish to matter. You made that public. So we're going to finish this the same way." I nodded to Otis, and he stepped forward with a folder in his hands. Inside were printed copies, one for each of my children, one for Darnell, and one that Otis held up high enough for everyone gathered to see. 6 weeks ago, I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. I gave my son power of attorney because I trusted him to help manage my accounts as my hands got weaker. Within 6 weeks, he transferred $350,000 out of my retirement savings. Every dollar of that money came from 38 years of double shifts as a labor and delivery nurse. I watched Darnell's face as I spoke. The color was draining from it with every word. He bought himself a sports car, I continued. He took a trip to the Bahamas with 6 friends, and when I confronted him about it, he told me, and I quote, "You're too old to need that kind of money anyway." A murmur ran through the crowd. I saw Darnell's aunt cover her mouth. I saw his cousin, the one who'd been laughing with him minutes earlier, take a small step away from him, like distance might protect her from whatever was happening. "I have the bank statements," I said, nodding toward the folder in Otis's hands. "Every transfer, documented, time-stamped. I have a video recording of my son telling a room full of strangers that he still had access to my accounts, even after I revoked his power of attorney, and that he planned to keep taking from me because he didn't believe an old woman like me could stop him." "Ma, please," Darnell said, his voice cracking now, all the swagger gone from it. "Not here. Not like this. You didn't extend me that same courtesy," I said. "You humiliated your mother's entire life's work in front of strangers on a live video, laughing while you did it. So no, Darnell. Not in private, here, now, in front of the same kind of audience you performed for." I turned to face the rest of the family, the neighbors, the friends gathered in that backyard. I worked 38 years, so my children would never have to struggle the way I struggled growing up. I skipped vacations. I worked holidays so younger nurses could be home with their families. I did without, again and again, so that one day my children would have something. And my son decided that money existed for him to take, because he believed I was too old, too weak, too foolish to notice or to fight back. I looked directly at Darnell now. You were wrong about all three. Marcus stepped forward then, and I hadn't planned for this part, but it moved me more than anything else that happened that day. He looked his younger brother directly in the eye and said, "Darnell, I love you. You're my brother, but what you did to Mama is not something I can just let go. None of us can." Patrice, standing on my other side, was crying quietly, but her voice didn't shake when she spoke. "You called her old and foolish. She is the strongest woman any of us will ever know. And you're about to find that out the hard way." Darnell stood there in the middle of that silent backyard, surrounded by family, surrounded by the community that had watched him grow up, and for the first time since this whole ordeal began, he had nothing to say. No laugh, no excuse, no casual dismissal, just silence, and the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, all of them now seeing him exactly for who he truly was. Ronaldo stepped forward one final time, his voice calm but firm enough to carry across the whole yard. "Son, your mother stood beside every one of us for almost 40 years, on picket lines, in hospital hallways, fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Today, we stand beside her." I watched my son's face crumble in front of everyone he'd ever tried to impress. And for the first time since that Tuesday afternoon at my kitchen table, I felt something shift inside my chest. Not joy exactly, something closer to peace. The peace of finally being seen, finally being believed, finally standing in the truth, instead of carrying it alone. Within 72 hours of that backyard confrontation, Darnell's world changed completely. Ms. Whitfield filed the civil case that same week, using the bank records, the video confession, and the email Curtis had found. Darnell's lawyer took one look at the evidence and told him settling was his only real option. He signed an agreement to repay every dollar. The sports car went back to the dealership. He sold what he could to cover the rest, and the remainder came out of his wages, garnished for years to come. He called me 12 times that week, begging me to reconsider, telling me family shouldn't do this to family. I let every call go to voicemail. The same words he once used to protect himself, I now use to protect my peace. My family thought cutting Darnell off from easy money was cruel. What they didn't understand is that money was never a gift. It was a lifeline I built with my own 2 hands. A boundary isn't punishment. A boundary is self-respect, spoken out loud, for the first time in a mother's life. If you're done giving endlessly to people who call your sacrifice nothing, hit like, subscribe, and drop boundary in the comments below.